Okay, so today we're going to be talking about international trade. Now, we've talked about trade before and how people gain from it. But what about international trade? Isn't it the case that we need to, protect our domestic industries, or maybe we need to reduce our dependence on foreign oil, or make sure that manufacturing jobs stay in America, right? What about, considerations like that? Are those actually true? Okay. And so let's consider the following. So between 2004 and 2008, China tripled their export of tires to the U.S. Okay, and there's a lot of discussion about China manipulated their currency and blah blah blah, and maybe they did and maybe they didn't, but that level of discussion is immaterial for this part. Okay, in 2009, President Obama announced that Chinese importers would face a 35% tariff on imports, which was meant to help protect jobs in the U.S. tire industry. Okay, for now, just think of a tariff. Okay, so there was a 35% tariff, right? Think of a tariff as a special tax on imports. Okay, so just like when you go to the grocery store or the gas station and you buy your 99-cent candy bar, right? And you go up to the cashier and the cashier says, just kidding, that'll be $1.05, right? That 6 cents there is the tax, and so now we're saying let's think about a 35% tax, right? Okay, so let's think about what would happen, and so let's think about this market. Okay, so we have U.S. tires. Okay, and we have Chinese tires. Okay, and we have a special tariff placed on tires, which is a tax. Taxes are not something that we're going to be covering in this class in general, because their analysis ends up being a little bit confusing to some people, and it's not a lesson that I want to get into. But basically, with a tariff, what we end up doing is we shift the supply curve up by the amount of the tariff. Okay, I'm not going to test you on that in this class, but this is how we do it. Okay, so the tariff tax rather actually does shift the supply curve up, not left, up. Okay, and so here, right, what happens is the price of Chinese tires increases, the quantity decreases, and so what happens over here, right? Well, I submit to you that U.S. made tires and Chinese tires are substitutes, and so the price of this substitute has gone up, which, as we know from our previous lectures, leads to an increase in the demand for U.S. tires, right, which shifts demand to the right. Okay, and so price and quantity both increase. And so what we can see is that tires in general are now more expensive, right? And so if that's true, we should expect to see people buying fewer tires in general, right? So it is true that we have more American-made tires, right? That's true, which means more people in America making tires, and we're going to import fewer tires. That's true. But what we'll see later on in class is that what will happen is there will be an overall reduction in the consumption of tires, and as a result of this, people are driving around on tires that are older, perhaps a little bit more worn down, right? And so one of the unintended consequences of this is that people use tires for a longer time, and they potentially get in more accidents, right? So we did see in 2009, 2010, trucking accidents increased because trucks, as it turns out, use 18 wheels. They've reduced their consumption of tires the most, and we see more trucks getting in accidents. But we'll come back to all of this later on in this week or in this lesson. Okay. Now, when it comes to international trade, okay, what I want you to remember is that trade is really just the act of buying and selling, right? So trade is just buying and selling, right? And that's all it is. When you buy something, you're trading your dollars for that good or service. And when you sell something, you're trading your good or service for those dollars, right? And this is true whether you're trading with your mom, your sister, your friend, your neighbor, someone in a different state, or even someone in a different country, right? Trade is just trade, right? There's no difference, right? And indeed, in the U.S. at least, we trade across straight state lines. We see people in Michigan will drink orange juice that was grown in Florida, right? And the reason why is because Michigan, as it turns out, really can't grow oranges. We can, right? If we wanted to, we could put the orange groves inside of a giant greenhouse, but that'd be really expensive. And so we just buy our oranges from Florida, where it's cheaper. Okay, and so this intra-state trade allows us to enjoy, Florida oranges. We get salmon from Alaska. We get crab from Maryland, Omaha steaks, Hawaiian pineapples, and all sorts of other things. Right? It also allows people in Montana to purchase cars that were made in Detroit. People in Seattle enjoy sugar, as it turns out Michigan is a big exporter of sugar. And people in New York to enjoy pumpkins made in Michigan as well, right? Not to mention our cherries and our sweet corn, right? So there's lots of things that Michigan trades across state lines where we send the goods to other states, okay? And so international trade is very similar, right? Instead of it being between states, it's just between countries. But other than that, there's really no difference. Now, international trade has grown immensely in the past 50 years, thanks in large part to a decrease in the cost of shipping brought about by the rise of the shipping container, right? And there's a guy whose name is Mark Levinson, who wrote a book, I want to say in 2003, called The Box: How the Shipping Container Changed the World. It's about 200 pages, and it's one of the greatest books I've ever read. So I highly recommend reading this if you have some spare time. But it's a really good book. So the shipping container, as it turns out, completely changed the entire world. Now, before we delve deeper into this, what I want to do is go more in depth about the gains from trade, where they come from, and how we sort of know that they're there. And so what we're going to be talking about today are the concepts of consumer surplus and producer surplus. Okay, so let's say we'll go into the next video for that.